Hey, I'm Matt, and we're going to escape this tank. This is part one of a two-part series. Part one's just a hardscape. I'll be going over some composition ideas, so hopefully that gives you some direction if you're escaping your own tank. Part two is going to be planting, and then I'm going to add something extra that makes this tank just a little more fun. As you can see, I already put a backer on it, and this is a UNS tank. Can't remember the size. It is really nice. It's got the beveled edges here, and glass is super thick, really clear. I'm really excited for this escape today because I went to Sequoia National Park recently and brought my brother there. We kind of hiked around and saw the amazingly huge trees there. So this tank will just be hopefully a escape of that. Really inspired by that. Really wanted to bring that home. I live in Washington, so kind of far away from that. And yeah, hopefully we get something good. As you can see, I already kind of drew out where I wanted to place everything. These are the logs I'll be using. They don't have a real name. Let's see if I can find a label here. This is from my local fish store, and they call it a tree stool. I don't know if you can see that. But what type of wood it is, I don't know. I think it's probably just fossilized wood of some sort. I didn't have to soak it at all. It already sinks, so no worries there. And then the hardscape I'll be using is just some quarry stone. You can get this at any landscape supply store pretty much. A lot of people just use it in their garden. They use it to like separate out sections of their garden and all that stuff. Also makes it super cheap. We're not going to use any aquascaping stones really today, so this stuff for like a 5-gallon bucket, I think it cost me like $3 or $5 or something like that. Super cheap, way cheaper than what you would get anywhere else. And I'm using this stuff instead of a fancy, aquascaping stone. Just one, just to show you, you can use stuff like this. And then two was also this stone in my area comes in a grayish color, you can see here. And then it also comes in a lighter whitish color, you can see there. And at the Sequoia Park, I noticed that a lot of the landscape had changing types of rocks, and a lot of the hillsides seem to be more of the lighter color stones, and then more of the flat areas were this darker color stone. So I'm hoping that we can match some of that today. This tank's not huge, so we can't go too wild, we can't get too intricate, but we're gonna give it our best shot. Like I said, we already drew out everything. I kind of spent some time just playing with the wood, seeing where I wanted to put it all. Once again, I used the rule of thirds I always use. You can see I drew the lines here. The rule of thirds composition rule isn't really a rule, it's more like a guide. If you're into photography and stuff, you'll see it all the time. It's what you can put on your camera screen when you line up your shot. And it also goes kind of hand in hand with the golden ratio you probably have heard of before. And a lot of times the golden ratio lines up with one of these intersections of the rule of thirds. So if you obviously like line up a focal point right there, then usually you're pretty close to the golden ratio. And then I also find the rule of thirds to be a little more flexible. I find if I use the golden ratio, I feel like I'm kind of focused in too hard on that one little spot. With the rule of thirds, I can kind of be more loose about it. I can start escaping and be like, hey, I want to put a focal area here, and then over time be like, oh no, I want to be more in the middle or like down in this corner here. That way I feel like I'm not trapped in while I'm escaping and being creative, and at the same time it also gives me some structure to follow. So like I said, once again, I'm semi following that here. Hopefully a focal point will be right here. And when you're composing your aquascape, a lot of times you don't want just a straight line down the middle. You want it to be shifted over just a little bit. Most of the time you want it in line with one of these two lines going up and down on the rule of thirds. It's a good guide. We have it slightly over, not a super big deal. This isn't a competition. This is just something that I have in my house and I like it that way. So that's how I'm going to do it. So if you like it a certain way, you do it that way too. Just remember, we're not competing here. This is all just for fun. So yeah, really just do what you want and do what makes you happy, and remember that you're going to be the one looking at the tank all the time. So if you're not happy with it, then just do something different. Rule of thirds is just a guide to get there. Okay, so these lines I drew were just straight up these here, or like this taller one here is like this one here. And when I did this, I just laid the tank on its backside and just placed the logs down. So I just laid it down kind of like this and then placed the logs in. Easy to draw. But what that did was also let me get a good idea and sketch things out as I went along, and before I needed to actually scape anything, I could just get a good idea and kind of sit with the layout without having to put the hardscape in all the way. When I make these videos, there's like 5 other tanks and other things going on, and I got 2 kids, so I'm always running around. So I don't always have the time to like set up the hardscape, get things going, and then get going from there. So this helps me out. I can look at it every day, be like, yeah, I like that, I don't like it. You can kind of see that I kind of shifted stuff over. You can see I erased something right there. And easy to take off the glass. You just use some rubbing alcohol, comes right off, easy peasy. And this is just some Sharpie, if I forgot I mentioned that. Yeah, so we're gonna have a slope higher up section here. Largest piece of wood's gonna be closer to the front of the glass. Smallest piece of wood's gonna be towards the back of the glass. That creates some depth, as if we were gonna be walking through from the front of the tank. So obviously things that are closer to you look bigger, things far away look smaller. Hopefully by stacking sizes from front to back, that will help us create that idea. My main concern with this tank is having a giant slope. As you can see, this piece up front is going to be pretty high up, so we're going to have to figure out how we're going to maintain that slope without everything falling down. Really quick before we begin, I just wanted to show you what soil we're going to use. We're going to use Aquasoil, UNS systems, and I just happen to use both UN systems, tank, and Aquasoil. You don't have to. I'm not sponsored or anything by them. The only reason I picked this actually was because it's a smaller granule and it's a little more brown red than the black, and the soil in the park was more brown red than it was black, so I thought that matched it better. And I actually like using smaller beaded Aquasoil just because it holds onto the plants a little better, prevents them from floating away. We're not going to be adding any root tabs today. We're just going to go straight up soil, so no reason to add any of those. I do plan to inject CO2 into this one and then have a small hang on back filter, maybe upgrade to a canister filter. This tank will be a little more high maintenance because we're going to be testing a lot of things out today. So I'm also not just showing you how to aquascape something. This is actually going to be a test tank. So we're going to be using some burnt sticks as well. And the park, when we visited, went through a fire a couple months or a year before. So there are a ton of burnt logs and timber and stuff all over, and I thought those looked really cool, and they're really good contrast between those grand trees and just normal sized trees. Their bark actually protects them from fire. So yeah, that's super cool. I thought we'd add that to the tank, and hopefully we can add some of that later on. As you can see, we're kind of running out of space already with just these 3 in here, but we'll figure it out. We'll go along and do it. All right, let's get going. Okay, we're going to start out by building up this first section here. Now with these quarry stones, you want to make sure that you rinse it off really well. I did that 3 times already and they're still a little dusty, but that's alright. The filter will take care of it, and we'll do some water changes, so not a big deal there. And if you've seen another video of mine, you'll see that I like to usually put foam on the bottom of the glass, but when you're using some nicer glass, like this UNS system glass, and when they're small nano tanks like this, we're not going to be stacking up a ton of rocks on top of each other, so there won't be as much weight. But also the glass is 5 millimeters thick instead of the 2.5 you would get at like a cheap tank, like a Petco tank or something. And what that means is that the glass will be able to hold a little bit more weight, it'll be less likely to crack, and be more resilient. So this left side, I'm going to be doing the wider stones, and I'm doing that because usually when things are close to you, hopefully they are also more apparent, they look a little more bright, so that's why we're doing that. And they will also match the stones on the hillside like I was talking about. This will be stacked up pretty high, so we do want to make sure that they are stable. like it's a little bit like Jenga. Ooh, there we go. Okay, there we go. So I am leaving a space in the back because we're just gonna put some plants back there, and I think I'm gonna have the filter tubes come down this way, so we want some space for all that, and the higher slope will hide all that with the plants, so that'll be awesome. I'm gonna put this in here just to get an idea of how high we need to be. Is that about right? It's about right. That looks pretty good. So you can see we have a little bit of a gap right here. We're gonna fill that up. And the color of the ones in the back won't matter as much just because no one's gonna see them. That looks good. Like a flat stone. It's kind of weird. There we go. No, that's not gonna work. Oh! My Jenga! Let's get this. Okay, that should be good. Have this ledge come forward, and we'll just have a slope like that. Let's put that in the rule of thirds section. Bang! Oh, so beautiful. Okay, so then we'll go over here. I have way more stones you guys can't see. My secret stash of stones. That one's very triangular. Flat one. That's not gonna work. That's too boring. So I want to have more stones kind of jetting off. And I'm gonna rotate this face to be towards this direction. I'm gonna add some Aquasoil. So sometimes I do this if I notice I'm dropping the rocks a lot and having a hard time lining things up, just because the Aquasoil will act as kind of a cushion, and the rocks will just smash on the Aquasoil instead of the glass directly, hopefully distributing some of the weight. Alright, I think that's pretty good for now. I have to check the front side. Once again, I'm always skipping from here, but we're gonna be looking at it from where you are, so I'll check that and see how that looks. Alright, cool. So we have the face of the rock, the main rock up front, guiding us in that direction where we want our eyes to go. So just keep that in mind when you're hardscaping. You always want to create some leading lines. We use the rule of thirds to just give us where we want to place them, but then the hardscape we use leading lines like this rock face to point towards where we want the main focal point to be. You can also do that with sticks if you're using, you know, intricate aquascaping wood. Then usually you want all those sticks pointing towards your focal area, and then separating that out and creating a little bit of opposition by not pointing every single stick in that area, just most of them. So our height is getting there. I think I'm gonna have to add, I don't know if I have to add that guy there. I don't think I do. Let's see how the height looks. The soil's gonna be good there. Yeah, so I'm gonna have to add more height in order to get it where I want it to be. Sometimes it's easy to get locked into one piece of hardscape you really like as it's on its own, but it just doesn't work out, so you just gotta ditch it. Oh no! We are gonna glue all this together. I'm not just doing this randomly. There will be glue involved as well. Something to keep in mind is that we do have this stone pretty much on the face of the glass up front. That's gonna make it really hard to clean. You're gonna have to use like small Q-tips and tweezers to get at that, but that's all right as long as you're aware of it and you know and you're okay doing that. Then go for it. But if you don't want to do that, then just give yourself a bit of space, usually like a 1/2 inch like 3 centimeters or something. Okay, so it doesn't look like I'm gonna be stacking the stones without gluing them together. So let's do that first. All right, so I just got some tissue paper and I'm gonna tear it up a little bit. People just roll it up right away. I like to tear it up, just creates a little more surface area for the super glue to soak into. So I'm just gonna look at where the rocks touch. I'm gonna move the rocks away and then I'm gonna wedge the paper where they touch. Sometimes that's easier said than done. Find that using really fine, you see that fine tip tweezers helps a ton with that. So you can get a box of like 100 of these things for like $3 to $5 on Amazon, and they usually just fit right onto a super glue bottle, and they make it way easier to get the glue where you want it to go instead of all over the place. I'm using Gorilla Glue. You can use any cyanoacrylate glue. I don't know how I feel about Gorilla Glue. I usually use the like super cheap stuff and it feels like it's more liquidy, making it easier to use. The Gorilla Glue is a little more thick. It is not this stuff, which is the gel. It's just a normal super glue, so I don't know why it's so thick, but just squeeze enough in, making sure not to douse it. You can also push the cotton with the end of this thing since it's so small. I feel like it's rigid enough to push it more into the rocks, and that helps out a ton. And then we want to push the rocks together. Here's like a super secret thing. Well, let's just add another one that I've been using with the miniatures I've been printing for some of these scapes, and something no one talks about. So once I get this one, and I'll show you. Just a reminder, this one's in the back. I don't even know if you can see it, so I'm not too worried about it showing or anything. If this was up front or somewhere you would see more directly, then I would take more time, and then I would actually cover up the super glue when it was still damp with some Aquasoil. You can just pick up the Aquasoil and pinch it, and then usually and then like, you know, twist your fingers together. That makes a powder, and yeah, that hides the super glue really well and the tissue paper really well. But that secret, you don't want to buy accelerant for your super glue. You can use some baking soda, and people have been putting baking soda in their aquariums for a long time. So the baking soda will just I think it raises your pH a little bit. You have to look into that. Don't take my word for that. But what it does do with the super glue is dry it out super fast and then make like an even harder than plastic thing. So I like that a lot. I feel like because it's so hard, it actually does better than the tissue paper sometimes. One thing to keep in mind when you're using these tips is that you want to wipe off the end in between uses. That way the super glue just doesn't dry on the tip before your next use. That looks good. We're gonna go to the next one. So I'm just gonna cut, and then we'll come back when I'm done gluing. I lied, I didn't want to cut. I felt too alone when you guys were gone. Sometimes the super glue needs some time to soak into the paper, so if you feel like the paper is not really getting wet, you just gotta wait a little bit, wait a couple seconds, add the super glue, wait a couple seconds, add more if you need to. Now with the baking powder, you don't want to go too crazy with it. You don't want to stick your super glue tip into the baking powder because that'll just destroy the tip. And you want to be a little bit accurate with the baking powder. You don't want to just dump a whole thing in there because when you add too much, it'll definitely affect the water quality. You can do some water changes, but it's easier if you just, you know, take your time, right? You don't always have to do the tissue paper method if it's like a really good contact, and if you use the baking powder. Now I 3D printed a little like container thing for my baking powder. Makes it easier to pour out. You can use anything. So I used to just take a pinch and pinch it and like do one of these things. That'll work fine too. My wife found this bottle sitting on my desk and was like, "Do we need to have a talk about something?" And I was like, "No, it's just baking powder." Maybe I shouldn't put that in the video. It's fine. So that's glued up. I think that's gonna work fine. Let's double check. Probably a good idea to check that before. Whoop, there we go. How's that look? Good? Bad? So-so? Maybe a little too flat. We do need to hide the cut edge. Okay, I'm not gonna have a pathway of sand or anything, so we don't have to worry about where the Aquasoil goes as much. So that's kind of nice. If you were doing a sand layer, you have to be really cautious of where you put Aquasoil and all that stuff, but since we're not doing that, we can just kind of pour it everywhere. It's going to be at the bottom of the tank anyways. As long as we get those rocks kind of down low, that'll be fine. Now I don't want this piece of wood right up against the glass because I will have to clean the glass. It'll be a pain to clean the entire front end of the glass if there's a giant thing leaning on it. I think now's the time where I fill this space up because I'm having a hard time figuring this out. Fill it up. Sometimes I figure it out better, so let's do that. You know what I'm going to do? I'm going to fill this little space up with some lava rocks so I don't use so much soil. If you want to use a lot less Aquasoil, you can just fill deeper areas with lava rock. And lava rock's actually really good. It has a lot of surface area. And with that surface area, the bacteria, beneficial bacteria that does your nitrogen cycle can just live on the lava rock. And there's more surface area for them to populate. That's why in like reef tanks and stuff, they use crushed coral. One, just because it affects the water parameters, but two, because it also has a lot of surface area. And that's what they also call like live rock in saltwater tanks. It's called live rock because of the bacteria on there. That's what's alive on the rock. Something to keep in mind, you don't want to go too high with the lava rock because it's going to be really hard to plant into because you can't push the plant roots down into the lava rock. But this is going to be under the wood, so I'm not super worried about it. There's not going to be any plants sticking out of the wood or anything like that. So the rocks are also really rigid. They like to kind of lock into place. And because they lock into place, they actually act as a really good, a really good base for your Aquasoil. And it will help prevent all of your Aquasoil from starting to cascade and slope towards the sloped section. I think that's good enough. That'll just help us out a little bit there. So when I use lava rocks, I like to kind of push the Aquasoil into lava rock because there's going to be some gaps and stuff that the soil will fall into eventually. And we can handle that right now instead of later. So I got a hole in the back here. You can use filter floss, and filter floss is really just pillow stuffing, but I'm just going to use super thick rolled up piece of paper that I used for super gluing earlier. I've never had an issue doing this. Some people say it'll break down over time, but I've done this with some tanks that were like 4 years old and it lasted. So yeah, it's always worked for me. Okay, that's looking pretty good. So putting the log on, it looks like we need to add more here, and then some rocks to maintain the slope that we want. Maybe for the slope, I can finally use my special. Can I do that? Will that work? Will that do it? Let's find out. Nope. So I rotated the stone just so that it lines up more of the angles of the other rocks guiding you that way. When it was facing the other way, it was creating a kind of a circular pattern from, if you look at it from the top here. So that means like sometimes your eye would go that way if you follow that rock, but since this rock is facing this way and it's flat, your eye is going to hit that rock, be like, oh, stop, and then you'll follow the rock face that way, hopefully. It's my idea anyways. Think about there's where I want this to be. Now we have to figure out how we're going to get there. I anticipate this is going to be the most complicated section, hopefully. Hopefully the rest of it's not this complicated. So I do need a third point. It'll be leaning on the glass right now if I just do that. I need a third point right up front for it to stable onto. I'm going to add more soil. But before this dries up front, let's poke it in and then add some more super glue. While we do that, we'll just crush up some Aquasoil. So you can see I'm just grabbing a bunch of Aquasoil and then rubbing in it. That makes it turn into powder, and then that will hide the glue a little better. It's not always perfect, but I feel like it does a good enough job. I'm gonna put this here. You won't see it hopefully, but there we go. Actually, that doesn't look too bad. Oops. So you can see this piece of wood's kind of pushing against that piece. Maybe I want to angle the entrance towards that corner. See how that looks. Nah. I like it like that. This is going to be hidden away, so I'm going to put a lava rock back here as support. You do have to glue this piece of wood down to 2 anchors, just because if we move the tank, we don't want it falling over. We want to hide that cut edge. About like that. I want the entrance to look like you don't have to climb over a rock to get there. More like you just have to hike around the rock to get into the entrance of the piece of wood. That looks pretty good. So we are going to make a valley here, keeping in mind that this piece has to fit somehow, so don't want it as forward, we want it more in the back. So move that there. Let's give us a general idea. Okay, the slope we're going to make on this side is a lot less, it's a lot more shallow. Do want it pushed back behind this left side, leading your eye out. Again, making sure the edges of the log are hidden away at the bottom. But if you go this way, you see it's a triangle. If you put the taller triangle section forward, really good, that creates depth, right? It's more shallow in the back, tall in the front. We do have something going here and then that other piece going in too, so you have to keep that in mind. I wanted this piece to be like way up here. I don't know how I'm going to do that yet though, but we will figure it out. I think that looks pretty good. This face is facing that way instead of going towards the valley, but that's okay. We're going to cover up most of it with Aquasoil anyways. And then this leads towards that valley again. Main subject's going to be right around here. Alright, so you can see I added some soil up front. I added a little rock here. That's just to help make sure that this Aquasoil stays in the area we want it to and it doesn't start slowly evening out that direction. And then this rock also makes it just look more natural because it looks like it came off of another piece of rock over here. We have our piece of wood in, and we're going to see if we can fit this guy in the back still. We have to slope that up pretty high. So let me figure out how I'm going to do that. We'll probably have to stack a ton of rocks. I'll have a rock face parallel to the front of the glass, so that's not going to work. We do still want it to face canted like this. So I'll turn it. Now there's more gap in the back for me to put that piece of wood. Looks like I need a couple more lava stones underneath it. I do have that prop going in over here on this line here, so I have to keep that in mind and leave space for it. Okay, we got our lead section filled out, all glued up. It's looking really good. I'm really happy with it. I glued this one down and this one down already. This one not yet, just because we have to add that last piece. Before we do that, I'm going to add a couple more of these tiny rocks, mostly as support and also as decoration. You always want to add a little bit of rocks, or a little bit of smaller rocks, just because it looks a little more natural when you do that. I feel like I just exploded everything everywhere, so let me clean up here. Some tiny things, sticks and stones, but no bones. I'm gonna do this because we're already filling out the space. Well, let's see if we can. No. Yes. I feel like it's a little too much if I try to add the burnt log. So I do want these in here. So I did char them. Maybe I'll release a video on how to do that. Literally, you just set them on fire. So maybe I won't. To be honest, the burnt sticks will change your water parameters. I'll let you know what happens there. I don't know how exactly they will, but I have a feeling that they will, so time will tell. I also took the bark off of all of these sticks. That way the bark doesn't mess up with the water. I know from experience that bark on would really mess this stuff up, so let's see how that looks, if that looks better than the large piece or not. They're all kind of the same length. I don't like that. 1 2 3 4 5 6. We want 5. Always try to keep 2 odd numbers if you can. In most cases that is better. Let's see how that looks. Just put logs everywhere now, as if they've fallen off of the tree because of the fire. If we dig it down deep enough, it should stay. If not, we'll put it back. A lot of the fallen logs there were kind of stacked like this, so I'm hoping just to mimic that a little bit. I feel like this area will be a little too barren unless we put at least one log chilling. Now I'm just breaking sticks and adding little pieces here or there. When you do that, you don't want you don't want them all to be the same length, but also look kind of weird. These two are of similar length. So I'm just going to scoot that over. Well, that looks weird there too. So let's try something like that. And I have a feeling if we add any livestock or anything, like fish or shrimp or something, they're going to end up moving a lot of this stuff anyways. So we'll see what happens there. Now I want one piece in here just to act like it kind of fell off and landed down here. Alright, we're going to add random pieces of wood too, because there were pieces that weren't affected by the fire but were just downed. So just some down logs. We're going to add that last piece of the puzzle later on. I just want to keep in mind it is going in, so I don't want to use up all the space I have in the tank. That's good enough. Let's add a bunch of little rocks and then we'll be done.
when we lay the little rocks, you want to keep in mind they're falling off of the larger rocks. So, you know, this gray one doesn't match this white one, so you'll probably go more with this gray one over here. And when they're this small, you'll probably only end up seeing a part of them anyways. A lot of the fish and shrimp and stuff move it all around, so a lot of times the stones land on top of each other, so stacking them up in odd numbers helps out. A little dark for that area, so I'm going to change it. That's good. I don't like that one there, so I'm going to take it away. I like having the blank faces there. Maybe just a little bit peeking out the top. Looks like it happened a long time ago. They're barely sneaking out past the Aquasoil. There we go. Alright, so that's part one, which is the hardscape done. When the best part of the scape is ready, I'll be adding it to the tank, and then we can add in our plants.
Thanks so much for watching, guys. If you like the video, give it a like. If you want to see part 2, subscribe to the channel. Other than that, keep scaping. Have a good one. Bye. Hey, I'm Matt. 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 And we're gonna skate this tank. This is part one of part two. Part one of part two. Hey, I'm Matt. 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 And we're gonna skate this tank.